Now example 14 looks at the exam marks of boys and girls. Now they say that the exam marks of boys are normally distributed with a mean of 55 and a standard deviation of 11. And the marks of girls are normally distributed again with mean of 58 and standard deviation 8. So if I'm doing this question, one of the first thing I will mark down somewhere will be, I'm going to call the marks of boys, okay, X. Okay, and then it is normally distributed with mean 55, exactly what the question tells me, and standard deviation 11. Can you spot a mistake in my working? Good. Okay, there should be a square here. Now likewise for girls, in this line, I can write down, if I call the marks of a randomly chosen girl Y, then Y, it follows a normal distribution with mean 58 and standard deviation 8 means your variance will be 8 squared. Okay. Now once I've got this, then let's take a look at what they say. One boy, one girl are chosen at random, okay, from a list of candidates, and assuming that the marks are independent, calculate the probability that both of them will have marks over 75. Now this one will be quite easy to do. Okay. If you look at what we have here, this is the definition for the mark of a randomly chosen boy and for a randomly chosen girl. Then this is our distribution for the marks of the boys and girls. So what we want to find is probability that both of them have marks over 75. Okay, in other words, what we are saying is we want the boy to have more than 75 and we want the girl to have more than 75 marks. So all we need to do is to multiply the probabilities together, and for each one of them, okay, you can make use of the GC using these values to key in the probabilities. Okay, or rather to compute the probabilities, and then once I have everything, just multiply them out, I have my answer. Done. Now let's take a look at part B. Now part B says I want to find the probability that the girl's marks is at least 20 more than the boy's marks. So the first thing I will do is to translate this English sentence to max and a max equation. So I want the girl's marks, which is Y, to be at least 20 more than the boy's mark. Now what is 20 more than the boy's mark? The boy's mark is represented by X, 20 more, so plus 20, and at least means I have to have bigger than or equals 2. So the probability that they want you to find is this one. Now again, what do we want to do? We want to keep all the constants on the right and all the unknowns to the, or rather all the variables we put to the left. So once we have got this, then what I'll do is to work out the distribution for this. Now what's the distribution for Y minus X? You minus the mean. Okay, so you have 58 minus 55. Then what about the variance? You never minus, you add. Okay, so it's 121 plus 64. Okay, so once you have got this, okay, you can write down the distribution for Y minus X. And then with this, you can press your GC to compute this probability. Done. Now in part C, you're asked to find the probability of the difference between their marks to be more than 3. Now how can we change this to a max statement? First of all, the mark scored by a girl is Y. The mark scored by a boy is X. So the difference will be Y minus X, and you want it to be more than 3. Now this is half of the answer. The other half comes from the fact that the boy could have scored more than the girl. Alright? So you actually have two equations. Now sometimes we don't have to write two. One way to combine these two equations is to write Y minus X modulus is bigger than 3. Okay? So in other words, what the question wants you to find is this probability. Now, let's move down and look at your notes. So this is the probability that they want you to find. Alright, and this is the same as probability Y minus X bigger than 3 or Y minus X less than minus 3. And because these two events are mutually exclusive events, you can break them up into two pieces. Okay, and then because we have already found the distribution for y minus x in the earlier segment, y minus x follows a normal distribution. If you recall, if you look at your notes earlier, it has got mean 3 and variance 185. Okay, so you can just again use your GC to compute all this out to get your answer, okay, for each one of them. And then final answer, 0.830. Done. Now in part D, we are interested to find the probability that the girl's marks is more than 2/3 of the boy's marks. Okay, let's translate that. Girl's mark is y, 2/3 of the boy's mark is 2/3 times x. And we want girl's marks to be more than 2/3 of x. So the probability that we want is probability y bigger than 2/3 x. Alright, now again, we don't want to have variables on both sides. We will keep the constants on one side and the variables on the other side. Okay, and then that means I need to find the distribution for y minus 2/3 x. And this is actually a normal distribution. What does this mean? You look for your y. Y has mean 58 minus 2/3 of the mean of x, which is 55. Okay, then what about variance? Remember, variance you never subtract, you always add. So variance of y is 64, then plus 2/3 square, and then variance of x is 121. Okay, so with this you can just press your GC and get the distribution for your y minus 2/3 x. Okay, so it turns out that your y minus 2/3 x has got a it follows a normal distribution with variance 1060 divided 9 and mean 21/1/3. So now all it remains for us to do is to press your GC. Done. Finally, part E. Now part E says I want to find the probability that the mean mark of 3 randomly chosen girls is not more than 60 marks. So again, let's do the translation. 3 randomly chosen girls. First girl y1, second girl y2, third girl y3. Now what is the meaning of mean? Mean means you add everything together and you divide by 3. Okay? And you want the mean mark to be no more than 60. So that means the probability that you want to find is just this. Okay, and that also means that the random variable that you need to work out will be this piece here. Okay, so let's move down. So how to find y1 plus y2 plus y3 over 3? It follows a normal distribution. You add the 3 means together and divide by 3. Okay, you add the 3 means together, divide by 3, and the variances you will take 1/3 and you square them and you times the variance of each one of them, so that's 64 plus the same thing, 1/3 square 64 plus 1/3 square 64. Okay, so that's the variance, and when you press this out in your GC, you are going to get this. Okay, so now the last step is to use your GC to compute this probability. Okay, turns out that this is 0.667. Done.